I think one self-evident fact about public procurement is that it's 500 billion Norwegian kroner spent on public procurements each year, and this means there's a lot of market power there for procurers. So it depends, how do they want to use this power? Do they want to innovate, buy circular products, or would they like to buy products of yesterday? So that's part of the answer to the question, but it's not the whole answer. So I will talk about how could circular public procurement put municipalities in the driver's seat of the circular economy. And in DeFi, we are a unit here working with public procurements, around 50 persons working on different parts of the procurement process, and we are providing tools and guidance for public procurers, and around 15 of us are working on green and innovative public procurements, and I'm lucky enough to be working on both. And this is, I think, an advantage when working on circular procurement as we are doing now. And I think also the reference to Mariana Mazzucato earlier is also a good reference for us on public procurement, as she is also pointing to the importance of public procurement as a tool for the entrepreneurial state. And we have several basis for our work on this. One of those is the legal foundation that we have in the Article 5 of the Norwegian Public Procurement Law, which states that public procurers shall practice their procurements in a manner reducing environmental harmful effects and promoting climate-friendly solutions where relevant. And this is a clear mandate and provides space for public procurers to choose environmental friendly solutions where relevant, and they need to know where their impact is. But in DeFi, we need to work to help them and provide tools for them and show them how to do this in practice. There's also a recent white paper on smarter procurements, mentioning the importance of innovative public procurements. Also, they also have some mention of the effects that public procurements could have on circular aspects, like increasing the market for recycled or secondary raw material, and also providing better conditions for extended lifespan and repairability of products. So this is also part of the foundation. So in DeFi, we work to increase the innovation effect, particularly for us working on innovative procurements. And this means we work both to have public savings, environmental friendly solutions, better services for users, and sound market conditions for trade and industry. But there are several barriers, and we know today that less than 30% of public units or organizations have innovation as part of their goals in public procurement strategies. So it's not high up on the agenda of many procurers, and also there's a lack of leadership engagements, as was mentioned yesterday by Jasper. And leadership is essential when you want to do transition. So we have to work on that. We have to work on the competence of procurers to enable them to do innovative procurements. And also there's a lack of time and resources for procurers. So this is the everyday life of procurers, and we have to try to make this better for them. We also have this white paper, which gave the mandate for our work on circular procurement, stating that DeFi should provide guidance and develop tools in support of the waste policy and principles of the circular economy. So this is kind of the starting point for our work this year on public procurements. We also had have the international commitments, of course, as the foundation of our work, and we've based a lot of our work on 2 documents, this Nordic report on circular public procurements, and also the EU guide of public procurements in the circular economy. And I'll come back to a bit of the elements, and we're going to launch this guide soon, likely to be launched in August. And we're also going to go into some particular categories of this, and I'll come back to that as well. And we know this is relevant for several public procurers, as they have included circular economy targets in strategies and policy documents, like Fredrikstad and Oslo and Trøndelag and also Østfold have. So there's relevance for them, but not all of them have connected it with public procurements like they probably could have. So circular procurements and the central principles that you all know, extending the product lifespan, closing energy and material loops, and clean and non-risky cycles is kind of the 3 major principles that we lift up here based on those 2 reports. And we also ask the procurers to follow the priorities of the waste hierarchy. And I think this is a good guide when you're a procurer, because if you, for instance, look at this hierarchy, you can start with prevention, and then you can look at your procurements, and maybe you would like to consider whether you have to buy these single-use plastics anymore, like Oslo and Hurtigruten have done recently. Or perhaps we also work with artificial turfs, kunstgressbaner, and we know that Fredrikstad have said they will not buy any more rubber granulates for their artificial turfs. This is also a way to prevent waste. And we also have examples of cooperating to cover similar needs. For instance, we see several municipalities joining together in market consultations, which I'll come back to. But we also see Halden municipality who have bought electric cars, which they are sharing with inhabitants outside work hours. And this is also a way to cover similar needs and to share products. But this could be extended, I guess, to sharing offices, sharing energy, and there are several examples that you know. And when you move down, you could also look at reuse. We have examples of public procurers trying to reuse building materials. We know that there are still a lot of barriers there for them, but they are trying, like Omsorgsbygg and Undervisningsbygg have done recently. So there are some examples of reusing bricks, for instance, but you have more of those examples in Netherlands, of course. And also, we have, moving down, you have the option of recycling. And I think also when we have been a lot digging into this artificial turf procurements lately, and we see that a lot of artificial turfs are not recycled, but there are possibilities to do that, and instead of incinerating or putting them out in the woods somewhere just to not be dealt with, they could be recycled and put into use again as new turf or other products. So this is also an option for procurers that they are increasingly becoming aware of, I think. And then moving down, you could also encourage industrial symbiosis, but I think the only example we found so far is the example of biofuels, where you have organic waste used for buses or waste transport for that. So some examples are popping up also in Norway, but not as many as in other European countries, perhaps. But it's interesting to follow. And Here's what we're working with in DeFi at the moment. As I said, we have this guidance that will be launched in August, which is cross-sector. But we're also digging into some particular categories. So we have already launched guidance on reduced and smarter use of plastics through procurement. This was commissioned by the Ministry of Climate and Environment. We are looking now for pilots to follow in that project in order to get some examples. And we know Oslo, for instance, is on that ball and trying to do some interesting stuff on that. And we have criteria for food and beverage, where reduction of food waste is central. We are also recently put out for hearing criteria for procurement of IT equipment, which will be, I guess, launched in the autumn also, or perhaps before the summer if we're able to finish it up. And then, as mentioned already, procurement of environmentally artificial turf, which will be launched in the autumn, and circular criteria for buildings, circular furniture, and textiles. So these are the categories or sectors that we have chosen to start out with, both because they represent problematic areas that are in focus, and also because they have a big impact in terms of environmental effects. Okay, so we have some tools in terms of innovative procurements. And what procurers should do when they start out with a need, they should always go out to the market. That's what we advise them to do, and what they are also it's also clarified in the law that they have a lot of space to do so. So they should go to the market, both because they could send signals to the market of the requirements that they will be coming with later on. They could also find out what kind of requirements they could ask from the market, because that's not always clear when you're sitting there in your office. And also, you can also find out how you can balance award criteria to that. And we have examples of, for instance, Omsorgsbygg with the zero-emission construction sites, where they consulted the market, and they initially thought that they would ask for fossil-free construction sites, but found out that it would actually be possible to have zero-emission electric vehicles for the construction sites. But this was dependent on the market, so they would have to join forces with other procurers in order to have that response from the market. And now we see that in 2016 they asked for fossil-free construction sites, but in this year, 2019, they are asking for zero-emission construction sites, and this is actually standard in Oslo now. So we are hoping that we could see the same kind of effects in other areas where we have similar market consultations, like we also have the waste-free construction sites and the reuse of building material consultations that we've had. And I should mention that we work in DeFi, we work closely with the National Program of Supply Development, National Program for Leverandørutvikling, and these are very good facilitators for public procurers when it comes to these kind of market consultations, and also in connecting procurers with similar needs to each other, so that they could join forces and challenge the market. So there's a big potential there, and also when you open up specifications, instead of asking for instance, a car, you could ask for mobility services, like Lørenskog kommune has done recently. So that also opens up for more innovation from market actors, and makes it possible for you to have not only cars, but you could have bicycles, and you could maybe share them more efficiently with other units in your municipality than you initially thought. And also you could do things in the contract to promote innovation. You could have bonuses, and you could have contracts that are enabling technological developments throughout the contract period, and you could have options in the contract. So there's a lot of things you could do if you are at the point of market consultation and you are thinking, are there existing solutions in the market? Yes, there are. You could still do a lot to promote innovation. But if the answer is no, there's no existing solutions in the market, then you'll probably need to go into one of the more heavy processes. I'll skip this one. This is about the criteria we have. But this one is about the different, I will not go into details of this, but this is just to illustrate to you that there are different methods and procedures that you could go into, and some of those are particularly relevant for research and development, like pre-commercial procurement and innovation partnerships. In the pre-commercial procurement, you're outside of the procurement law, so you're under the FoU-unntaket, research and development exception, and this means you'll do the procurement at a later stage. And maybe some of you have been involved in that since you're in research, because it's often researchers are partners in those kind of projects. And innovation partnership also involves research, but there you have the procurement in the process. And here you have a partnership between the procurer and the business, where they can develop solutions together. And this is, of course, if there are no solutions in the market already. And you have, for instance, this was, for instance, used, the competitive dialogue was used for the Ampere, the electric ferry. So it's been used very successfully for several huge innovations. I mentioned the procurements, going from procurements of cars to procurements of mobility. And Lørenskog kommune, they initially went from thinking that they would buy cars for their home services unit in the municipality, to finding out that they wanted to buy, they wanted to ask for mobility services for the whole municipality. So it changed the procurement radically, and they're still in the process. And it also challenged them, because they had to work differently than they did before. But now they will probably end up buying not only cars, but and perhaps not buying. They will maybe rent or lease, and it will be probably other kind of mobility solutions, like bicycles or other types as well. But as I said, this also challenges the procurer, and it's important for them to have leadership engagement. If you want to do these kinds of procurements, you need leaders to be on board, because you have to change the way you work, and it's not done like an ordinary procurement. And also, just going back to this, like I mentioned, there are market consultations facilitated by the National Programme for Supply Development, and I think these topics that I've listed here are particularly relevant for the circular economy, and we have also connected some of them to an Interreg project that we joined this year. It's the Circular Procurement Interreg project, and it's chaired by the Netherlands Rijkswaterstaat, and we have both the environmental friendly turf and reuse of building materials are both part of this project. I see that I'm running out of time, so I'll skip to my last slide, because we have a conference in 1 week where we will have one PhD from SINTEF, Eivind Kristoffersen, will talk about the connections between sharing of data and digitalization, and how that will enable circular solutions as well. So I think I'll stop with that.
All right. Thank you. Let's give her a hand.